assessment, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10 on the 11th Parliament?
Well, the 11th Parliament did extremely well in terms of performance as far as legislation is concerned. I think Kenyans usually look at other things. They look at the performance of the Member of Parliament per constituency, maybe, or at the national stage. But at the end of the day, the primary responsibility of a Member of Parliament is to enact legislation. And we had a record number of legislations passed, more than any other parliament in the history of this country.
There may be a record number of legislation passed, but there are also the biggest number of controversial legislation, with some of them even being taken to court as to challenge their legality.
But that is a normal process in any democracy, is that you get certain things right, certain things are challenged. And because we have an independent judiciary and we have a very active population, politically active population, it's in fact a very good thing that we have been watched very carefully, and we have been corrected either by our judicial system or by our public. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, in fact, this is a plus rather than a minus.
All right. Do you agree that they performed well? Would you assess the 11th Parliament as having performed well?
I think the 11th Parliament, being the first Parliament after enactment of the new Constitution, you remember we had a lot of constitutional timelines to pass some bills, and at times they were got unaware, so they had to rush to pass those bills, making mistakes at times that resulted to people going to court to seek for constitutional interpretation. So I think they tried, being the first ever Parliament after the enactment of the new Constitution. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for you, you'd give them what, a scale of 1 to 10?
I'll give them a 7, which is a pass.
Okay.
It is a
Joe?
pass. One of the things that I find a bit of an oxymoron is that indeed we saw a lot of legislation passing, but there was critical bits of legislation that we needed to be passed that were not passed. For example, what Michelle was just discussing here with the ladies before we came on. I mean, the two-thirds gender principle has been one of those sticking points, and the entire life of the 11th Parliament was actually constitutionally a nullity, because they ought to have put in mechanisms to ensure that we have an even balance and not just the threshold being found, but the opportunity is created so that in future, if what we have seen with the girl child translates to Parliament, it means with affirmative action, there might come a time where it's the men who will be needing to enforce the gender principle rather than the women. So in the spirit of inclusivity, I was really hoping to see some more progressive bills being passed by the 11th Parliament. But that said, it was also a time also that there was the growing pangs of the new constitution. The term was also shorter than the other parliaments that we've had before. And there was also a lot more animosity this time around, because we saw a lot of sideshows that Mheshimiwa is referring to. We remember the 11th Parliament more for a lot of the drama that came out of it sometimes, rather than what actually was a function. And this has come out also in this election with some people who we thought were very high performers, that the electorate thought, you know what, you spent a lot more time doing a lot more than what we sent you for. And so they were shown the door this time. So it's one of those parliaments that had some great opportunities, but there was also great opportunities squandered. So I'm looking forward to a parliament that is more progressive, inclusive, and more mindful of Wananchi rather than political parties and interests.
All right, now, a sore thumb in the 11th Parliament, of course, is the two-third gender principle, which was not realized despite the court ruling and giving a deadline, and that was not done. And, gentlemen, let me come back to you, because it's been largely blamed on the men and not having the goodwill to do that. Let me start with you, Mheshimiwa Yusuf Hassan. What would you attribute the failure of the two-third gender principle to, that it did not happen, and hopefully now in the 12th Parliament it can be realized?
Well, I mean, I'm puzzled myself. I'm a very strong supporter of equality and justice, and definitely favor that our women who are underrepresented should be positively discriminated so that they can be represented in Parliament, and our Parliament becomes more representative of the face of our country. But it is a puzzling issue that, for me, why Parliament had not passed it. There are several factors. One of the reasons being a number of the male members of Parliament felt that they were being pushed unfairly to pass a legislation that was not going to benefit them in any way as we were approaching elections. And I think the argument now that is on the table is rather redundant in the sense that a lot of people are saying Parliament should not even sit. It should not be constituted.
Yes, we have FIDA going to court to try and have Parliament actually rendered illegal.
But I think that is putting the cart before the horse. At the end of the day, the institution that is going to pass that legislation and is going to empower women is Parliament. So I think, first of all, Parliament should be reconstituted. In fact, we have not even been gazetted. I don't know how many members of Parliament are male or female. I can only guess that, in fact, there are fewer women elected to Parliament than male. But until I see the gazettement, I really even don't know myself what the composition of our Parliament is going to be, nor does anybody else know. So once
but still, as we wait for that, what is it that, and that's why we're reflecting on the 11th Parliament, so that we possibly can look at what is the solution that is going to be found, because chances are, looking at the figures that we have so far, we already have more members of Parliament. I mean, if we look at the National Assembly, there is a shortfall of 27.
I have no doubt that the next Parliament would pass that bill. I absolutely have no doubt it will be passed. But what I'm saying is the reality is that Parliament is independent. It cannot, neither the executive nor the judiciary can impose. No judge is going to sit now and say Parliament must pass this bill or Parliament must do this or that. We're independent of the judiciary just as we respect the independence of the judiciary itself. So I think in a way they're going about it in the wrong way. They should be lobbying parliamentarians. They should
have that done. Okay,
yeah, they should go directly to parliamentarians and lobby them to accelerate the process. Although I have no doubt that in the next Parliament, be it in the first month or the second month, we'll definitely pass that bill.
All right. Didmas, are you confident that that's going to happen, despite the fact that the last Parliament did not manage to do it for one reason or the other?
One thing that I would like to bring out, we have arguments that we are making a reference to Rwanda as a country. But if you look at the journey that Rwandese walked to where they stand now, they took quite some time. And if you compare the time that Rwanda took to be where they are now and the time that has taken Kenya from 2013 to where we are now, we have 23 directly elected members of National Assembly for women. We have got 3 senators. I think we are on the right track. And it's only a matter of time that we can even surpass where Rwanda is. And 2, I think it's very important for Kenyans, the civil society, including FIDA, to understand that we need to move forward as a country. Instead of them going to court, they will have, engaged dialogue with the political parties, Parliament, to see amicable solution. Moving to court doesn't help at all. So what is important is dialogue with the stakeholders on how we are going to achieve the gender rule. But I'm sure that this Parliament, the Parliament, once convened, is going to pass various legislations. But most importantly also that civil society must understand that it's only Parliament that can implement the gender rule. So if you are moving to court to suspend the swearing in of members of Parliament, then you are not providing a solution. Those should be part of the solution by sitting down with the 2 houses and the political parties to actually, for example, now the slots for the nominations, they should be, we have no choice but to reserve those positions for women. And also the money that the political parties gets from the government, they should spend this money in finding women who are competent, not necessarily nominating the girlfriends who, once they are coming to the National Assembly, their performance is wanting. It blocks the way for other hard-working ladies into making the way into the National Assembly. We have seen very strong women elected. So what we need to do is that we need to engage the stakeholders to see where we can come up with a clear framework on how we are going to ensure that we have women elected in the National Assembly.
All right, Joy, are you confident, as the gentleman has spoken, that this bill will be passed?
You know, the problem with this bill is that we never even get to agree on what we need to pass. And when I listen to Didmas, I'm like, he needs to get a little bit of background on what has been going on for the last about 7 years since the Constitution passed. The women have lobbied. The women have had endless meetings. I have been part of several meetings where we came with different formulae of how we can achieve this principle. But there's always been lacking goodwill. Because if there was goodwill, the formula were from here to, we had almost 6 different formula on how we could achieve this on elections, not having to go into nominations. Because as it is, the criticism is that you have the 47 women representatives who are super MPs, for example, but they are MPs with such a wide portfolio that sometimes they're not able to be as effective as somebody who's just working in a constituency. So it's difficult to see what do they do, and that's a criticism. What do these women do? But at the same time, we have also the women, like Didymus has correctly said, women who go to parliament and the impact that the others are expecting to see from them is not felt. So it's a bit of a conundrum, and I wish Kenyans would have an honest discussion about it to reach a place where we appreciate that women and men offer different perspectives, and we are better when we sit together at a table rather than this talking at each other, which is what we were saying while we were waiting to come on. And I was saying I wish Michelle had had a panel that had both men and women so that you get both perspectives of this angle. Because if you talk to only the women, there's a way we only look at it from our angle. But now when you listen to the gentlemen, you can see there's the other angle of being bullied and being pushed. And so we need to come to a place where both come together and let's draft a way forward. But that said, our constitution, I think, when we drafted it, we managed to work a formula to stabilize the numbers in the Senate. We managed to stabilize the numbers in the county assemblies. It's only the National Assembly that remained a sticking point. And the problem with that is that we had entrusted the working and the passing of the Constitution to people who are beneficiaries of the process. And as Mheshimiwa Yusuf has said, when people did not see where the benefit directly to them would accrue, then there was a sticking point. Now we have a National Assembly that is already too large. Expanding it further to include the 27 more women on top, even for the taxpayers, they don't want that extra tax burden. So it's something we need to really work at, because there will be sacrifices that will have to be made. Some people will maybe lose the power of incumbency if their position is scrapped or is reduced. So it's one of those things that will be a delicate balance. But I'm glad that both of these gentlemen who are going to be part of the 12th Parliament are saying that they're confident this time will pass, because I will hold them to account. I will look for them and tell them, look, we sat at a panel and you said this is going to pass this time. So when we are lobbying, I look for these two specifically.
To find out what happened, if at all it doesn't happen. Now,
Yes.
and again, let's look at the performance of the 11th Parliament in regards to women before we move away from the 2/3 gender bill. And I have some statistics here from National Assembly Tracker that reveals apparently only one female member of Parliament out of 67 tabled a bill, which again adds to what you're saying, Didmas, in that sometimes you can have them there, but they're not effective. Would you say, Mheshimiwa Yusuf, that the ladies we had in Parliament in the 11th Parliament were effective to a point where we can actually see that having more women on the table, and again, looking at matters that pertain to women, things to do with marriage, to inheritance, to abuse, were they well represented in the 11th Parliament by the women who are there to ensure that now when we go to the 12th Parliament, they are effective and there is a need for them to be there?
Well, first of all, let me say, when you're looking at Parliament from outside and when you're inside, the situation is very different. For example, when you say only one woman presented
Tabled a bill.
Tabled a bill out of 67.
It is very difficult to present a bill for any private member of Parliament because of the overwhelming number of the political forces that are in Parliament. Secondly, we have 290 members of Parliament. It is very difficult even to get the attention of the Speaker to contribute on any debate that is taking place in Parliament. In the Parliament before, which this is my 3rd Parliament, was much smaller. You got more time and you could be given more opportunities to express yourself by the Speaker. But 290 plus the nominated members of Parliament, 300 and something, it's impossible. And the other factor is that you don't measure the performance of a member of Parliament simply by their performance on the floor. There are a lot of members of Parliament who are very active and engage vigorously in committees. And women are very good in committee meetings. They are much better in smaller groups than in a crowd or in a bigger parliamentary session. So there are a lot of women who have done fantastic job in the last parliament. Some of them who were not elected back. For example, our Honorable Nyokabi from Nyeri was a super performer in parliament as a parliamentarian. And also on the politics of women in parliament and the role of women in parliament and the rights of our citizens. But unfortunately, the citizens of Nyeri didn't feel that they needed to...
She deserved another term.
Yes. So also, you should not only look at the performance of the member of parliament in parliament, but also what they can do in the constituency. And the feeling in general for women representative was they were punished by the voter because they covered such a huge area. And they did not have the resources or the means to be able to be effective parliamentarians. Until very late, they didn't even have the resources to do anything. So to a certain extent, I think they were dealt a hard card in that sense. And the electorate did not understand why they were not performing as well as the next member of parliament, who had a CDF funds and who had other advantages.
Smaller constituency.
All right, Joy, and that would now bring in the question of the electorate's understanding of the role of a member of parliament, and specifically looking at even the figures now after the 2017 general election, there is less ladies in parliament elected on elective seats. Could that be a misunderstanding by the electorate of what the responsibility is? Again, the whatever grounds that were set for them to work possibly were almost unfair.
It is true, and I'm very glad that Mheshimiwa brought it up, because the women MPs had such... You're dealing with the entire county, while your other counterparts are dealing with just a constituency. And therefore, your impact, it's like a shout in a room. Yes, if the room is really large, then you cannot be heard. But when you've got a smaller constituency, you're able to work harder. But also, the women who came in as women MPs, some of them actually were out of their depth in a way. And before they actually managed to agitate enough to get a small budget, they spent quite a bit of time just, contributing on the floor of the House and accompanying male MPs here and there. And therefore, the impact was not able to be well felt. But the good thing that came out of it is that there was visibility. People saw women in leadership. People saw a lot more women coming out. And there are some of them who are, like he said, Honorable Nyokabi, Honorable Kajuju is another one, who actually came out as champions, and they took a cause and they ran with it. Fine, the electorate may not have brought them back, but they were able to make an impact that somebody could say, you see, having women in parliament actually makes a difference. One thing, though, that I wish that the Kenyans would learn is that when you have this women versus men battle, it never works out for anybody. Because like right now, there are places where you go and a woman has run for office, but the politics is they have their own seat. Why didn't she go to run for that one? Why is she running for this? And on that score, people look and they say, you know what, yeah, you go look for that one. Let the man take this one. And so women are losing out, even where they could have been competitive in terms of bringing more development. Look at somebody like Honorable Millie. She started off being nominated, but came out very strong and took over Mbita. And the people in Mbita have given her yet another chance, meaning they actually appreciate her leadership and they appreciate her for who she is. Now it's not a matter of being nominated. Sometimes this coming in as a woman rep, maybe just the door you need
be an entry point
to come in. But once you're there, please go ahead and prove yourself. Work hard. And that's why even with the women representatives who come in, you find people like now, me in civil society, will be working hard with them, trying to get them to be, what do you need from us? What support do you need? But as also Honorable Yusuf has said, this parliament is too large. One of the things they need to work at is to reduce their numbers. It will be painful, but we have to find a way of working together with the IEBC to either delineate our constituencies or to come up with a different system so that the numbers are more manageable. Because there's no use of having more nominated women. Then you've got a parliament, maybe not of 350 people, but now it goes up to 390, but nobody can get a word in. I listen to the debates, and sometimes it's so, because now the mics are switched off, sometimes it gets very stilted because you can't even carry a thought through before your time is up and they switch it off. So even for the quality of debate that we have, we need to have an honest and tell people, look, it's not just about a job. It's not about these are my people. let's look at it practically. Is this working for us? And then let's adjust it to size.
All right. Now, this is Kivumbi 2017, and we want to take a short break and also release KTN Home. But on KTN News, we're going to continue with this conversation, and we'll now look at more of the 12th Parliament and what is expected on the table. You'll remember, you're welcome to participate in the conversation, and you can do that via social media, Twitter handles, and the hashtag is Kivumbi 2017. The Twitter handles will be displayed as we go along. For now, we'll take a short break, but we'll be right back.
This is KTN News.
I don't think the election court is in place yet, but all we know is the gazettement has been done and governors have been sworn in. And the next question is when the election court is in place,